Welcome to PixelTunes Radio,
a podcast where we have fun
talking about video games
and video game music.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Ed.
And this is episode 98, Intros and Title Themes. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Cam Werme. Cam, say hello.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Dude, it's so good to have you on the show.
Anytime.
I remember last time we had you on, we did epic endings.
Yes.
So we felt, I think it was your suggestion actually, that we could kind of flip it and do the intros to games instead of the endings to games.
Right.
So this is going to be some of our favorite, most memorable introductions to games, or title screens, or like anything that comes before the actual gameplay starts. I guess we can kind of choose from for this episode.
True that.
We've got a lot of really cool stuff from a lot of varied systems.
Tons of different composers, and it's going to be cool.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
a lot of different music.
So
Very
what
eclectic.
what was the first track that brought us in, Cam? Because you were kind of adamant about putting this one in.
Well, my goal here is to basically usurp the episode and create a Dragon Quest episode. So you guys fell right into that trap.
Oh,
No,
not again.
Yeah. Well, so that was the Overture, the Dragon Quest Overture, which anyone who's a fan or has played a game has heard that track.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you haven't played it, you've probably heard it somewhere. And that particular one was from the Dragon Quest VI
Just
soundtrack.
like in the bathroom, just hanging out. I'm just like, what's that noise?
Yep, it just creeps up on you.
Yes.
For the Super Famicom, and this particular one just has the best sound. The one for Dragon Quest V wasn't as good. The instrumentation is better on this one. I just love this one. The way the snare drum sounds and the horns, just I love it.
Yeah, it is kind of a good choice for this theme of this show because, you know, if you're a Dragon Quest fan, this is absolutely the iconic opening theme. It plays before almost every single game. Did it play in the first Dragon Quest game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sheesh. So, yeah, this has been going on for decades now. I remember it from Dragon Quest Heroes. That's the only Dragon Quest game I've ever played. And even that, you know, it introduces that game as well.
That's one of the only ones I have not played.
Yeah, which it's an okay game. As the Heroes games go, it wasn't my favorite. But, you know, it had a fully orchestrated soundtrack with a lot of the tunes from the Dragon Quest series, so that was a lot of fun. Of course, composed by Koichi Sugiyama. You know, we've talked about him before. He's basically responsible for nearly every single piece of
Dragon
music
Quest game
composed for Dragon Quest VI. So, what do we got on the agenda for the episode today, Michael?
Well, we want to start off with mentioning Retro World Expo. We are going to be at Retro World Expo. The expo is a Connecticut expo, and it's going to be held from October 14th to October 15th. I believe it's at the Connecticut Expo Center in Hartford.
Yeah, so only 10 days from the release of this show, right?
Yes.
So only a little bit, a little bit over a week.
So we will have a panel there with fellow VGM podcasters Rhythm and Pixels and one half of VGM Jukebox.
Yes, but Josh will be there in spirit.
Yes.
They are finding a way to get him to be there either electronically or somehow.
Excellent.
Emily said she's going to bring Josh somehow.
She's going to pack him up in a suitcase and just shove him on stage. I know his leg's broken, but don't worry about it.
Actually, he's walking around now. He's a lot better.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I also want to mention that I am going to be doing a stream.
Gross.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing a charity stream coming up in October. It's October 8th, and all the proceeds go to the New Haven Animal Shelter here in Connecticut. And it's going to be really cool. So that's going to be on my channel, youtube.com/dongold. It's going to be October 8th, and it's going to be from noon until midnight. Yeah. And it's going to be called Castlevania Stream 2017. The reason for that is it's, you know, a charity supporting animals and animal shelters, and I'm going to be playing Castlevania games.
Oh, now I get it.
Now you get it. Yes.
Clever.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely post a link to that in the Facebook group when it's happening.
Yes.
Or maybe a little bit before, just to remind you guys.
Yeah.
Definitely a charity I can get behind.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to do something to give back to the community, and I love animals, so I was like, let's do it. So it's going to be really cool. The website, if you don't happen to catch the stream and you still want to donate on October 8th, the day of, and you can do that by going to findafriendforlife.org and just click on the donate button. And when you donate, please put in either the name of the stream, Castlevania, or you can put the YouTube, Dongold, whatever you want to put. Just make it very clear that you're donating for that reason, because we're going to tally up the results at the end, and we'll let you guys know how much you donated. So
very cool.
Yes.
Awesome.
So we also have some PixelChat questions.
As always.
What do we got?
First question of the day comes from Dan Bisciglia, and he asks, if you had 4 quarters at a Limitless arcade and you wanted to play games for an hour, what would your strategy be?
So to clarify what he's saying, or what we think he's saying, is you can pick 4 games. Doesn't matter.
I think it could be anything. I think it could just be an arcade. Every single arcade game in the world is in one building.
Right.
And you don't have to spend 1 quarter per one game.
You get 4 quarters.
Yeah,
you can use them as you want to.
Right.
On whatever.
You can pick 2 different games or one
you
game.
You could use 4 quarters on any game.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's...
Or 4
you don't
quarters
have
on
to
4
use
games.
4 different... Right. Gotcha. Okay. So let's let our guest answer first.
I've never really been much of an arcade person, but the games I have played in the arcade, I've played a lot of. So I might actually just spend them all on Ninja Turtles. or Double Dragon and maybe the Simpsons game.
My theory behind not spending 4 quarters on one game is you don't have the ability to beat the game. You know what I mean? So like if you're doing a beat 'em up, you can't
Unless you're really good.
Well, it's all about... It's not necessarily about what games you like, in my opinion. It's more about which games you're going to last the longest at. So if you put it in like Ninja Turtles, that game drains your quarters real fast. You're going to go through 4 probably pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Unless you walk into an arcade with a jean jacket and sunglasses.
Yeah. Or, you know, like what I was going to say is like you find a Play Choice 10 machine.
Okay.
You find like Super Mario Brothers. Well, even those have timers that count down. Like it's really hard. If you could find a game that's maybe a port of a game that you're really good at on a home console that will just let you go until like your 3 lives are used and you can pretty much get through that game, then you could probably spend at least a half an hour on 1 quarter just kind of going through that game. Or a game where you know, like on the SNK Neo Geo cabinet, sometimes it tells you what difficulty level it is down at the bottom corner, and if you see it's on a really easy difficulty level, you could probably throw a quarter in there and last for, you know, half a game or an entire game, and that would help you out too. But I don't know if I have any specific games like that I could spend 15 minutes on average per quarter. Like that's a long time for an arcade game.
Yeah.
So what are your choices?
I would probably go with Final Fight. I'm really good at that game. Okay. Final Fight I would last a long time in. And maybe like Baseball Stars 2 on the Neo Geo.
Okay.
Because it's usually like a quarter for every 3 innings or so, I think. And that usually takes a little while to get through too. So maybe 2 quarters on Baseball Stars or 2 quarters on Final Fight. We'll mix it up.
Okay. So my choices are going to be NBA Jam Tournament Edition. The reason being is you put in 1 quarter, you play a full game, you're done. You know.
I thought you only get like 1/2 with 1 quarter.
Really?
I think with the dip switch settings you can change it.
Okay.
So it's possible that somebody can set it so you can play a full game on 1 quarter.
So I would set it to play 1 game with 1 quarter.
Yeah.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, just because I've never played it in the arcade. And the other 2 would be the Castlevania arcade game that came out within the past 5 or so years. It was during the Wii era.
With the whip thing?
With the whip thing, because I've never played that, and that's
right.
exclusively only out in Japan. I don't think it ever came out here, and I've never played it. So that, and then the last one's going to be those erotic Castlevania pachinko machine. Because I think it's a really weird, goofy concept. And
that'll be the quickest quarter you've ever spent.
Of the quickest quarter that you've ever spent on the most lewd content. So I think that'd be really funny.
I would not have guessed either of you would have picked a sports game, and you both picked sports games.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you get more of a controlled amount of time with a sports game, I
Right.
think, so you can kind of almost guarantee what the
I
amount
wouldn't
of
know.
time
I
would
never
be.
played a sports game in an
Yeah,
arcade before.
yeah. Usually it's like you get so many innings or so many holes of golf rounds or something like that. So it's a good way to kind of like estimate how much time you're going to spend.
I love actually Baseball Stars 2.
It's a fantastic
on the NES.
game.
The NES one is the one I know.
okay.
I know the Neo Geo one is very
the
different.
bowling alley near me used to have the Neo Geo version. I would play it all the time.
So our next question comes from Bryan Mosley. I don't know who that is. Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. He's
No.
not my co-host
No.
on Impulse Project.
Definitely not.
Or Pixelated Audio.
Who's a composer that pops up in rotation while listening and you naturally think you don't really want to listen to their music? Not hate them or anything, just would rather pass. What do you think, Cam?
I'm going to be a little controversial
Oh,
and
snap.
say...
He's gonna
You say Tim Fallon and you're
No.
out of this.
You know I'm not going to say that. He's one of my favorites. But I'm going to say actually Yuzo Koshiro.
Okay.
Because I think it's partially due to the fact that I don't have a whole lot of his stuff. And some of the stuff I do have, I'm not that big on. Like, I love ActRaiser, the game, which is why I have the soundtrack, but I'm not actually crazy about the soundtrack. There are a couple tracks on it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really
No,
like.
I agree with you.
And Streets of Rage, is an amazing sound, but the songs don't really like. I will often skip those.
That I disagree with you on.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna go with him.
Cool. What about you?
Surprising. For me, Norio Hanzawa, which I know is a lot of people's favorites, but I do like a slower paced, 4 on the floor, 4/4 tempo kind of a song. And Norio Hanzawa's tracks are always very frenetic, all over the place. Different time signatures, and it's too. I can't concentrate while I'm listening to any of his stuff. Like I can barely even drive when I'm listening to his stuff. So sometimes I'm in the mood for it, and I can listen to a couple songs and be cool with it. Other times I'm like, dude, this is too much, and I just gotta skip to the next one.
Yeah.
So he's my composer that I'm kind of meh on. What about you?
Well, it's tough because there's composers that I really like some stuff that they do, but I really dislike some other stuff that they do. To give you an example, I love Grant Kirkhope's work on Perfect Dark. I think he worked on GoldenEye and a couple other games, but he also did the Banjo-Kazooie music.
Right.
And
It's so cartoony.
I just, after listening
bouncy.
to one or two tracks, I'm just kind of like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much dun 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 dun. Like, there's only so much of that you can listen to.
That's literally the whole soundtrack.
That's literally the whole soundtrack. So it's good music in game. Like, I enjoy it when I'm playing the game, but I couldn't drive around listening to dun dun dun. I feel like I'm going into a spooky, scary cave. All the time driving.
And the other half is just like you're hanging out on a farm.
Right.
Between two. Yeah.
Just listening to you do that,
Yeah.
I've heard enough of it.
Yeah.
Already.
But he's a great composer. He does really great work. So I don't want to poo-poo
Right.
on him.
Oh, I think with Banjo-Kazooie, he was doing what he was told to do.
Exactly. The music that he writes for those games totally
Right.
fits the mood.
And
but
GoldenEye Perfect Dark was more like
way more
stuff that he,
action-packed. Right.
more along his style. I mean, and he does do a lot of orchestral stuff nowadays. So.
Yeah.
But his stuff is good, except for some of that more cartoony
So
stuff.
great stuff. Just can't listen to it on the drive. to work.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Bryan and Dan, for those Pixel Chat questions. Please ask us your Pixel Chat questions. Send us an email to pixeltunesradio@gmail.com, and we will answer them on a future episode. Ready to get into the actual meat and potatoes of this podcast?
Yum.
All right.
do
So,
it.
Cam has picked the first track, and we're going to go round robin. Cam, what is your first intro/title screen theme of the day?
It's the title to F1 ROC2 Race of Champions, which you just pointed out is redundant. Which is I never realized that ROC actually stands for Race of Champions.
F1 Race of Champions 2 Race of Champions.
Yes.
It's by Masanao Akahori, which I can't wait to talk about after the track. And let's give it a listen. It's pretty awesome.
Right on. For the SNES.
Yes. Alright, so F1 ROC2 obviously is the sequel to F1 ROC. The games are pretty different. The first one is sort of like a more traditional racing game, and this one is so obviously an F-Zero clone.
Absolutely.
It's even got a level called Moon City, which looks like Mute City. It's the same like nighttime landscape, city landscape in the background.
Yeah. Kind of like Sata was like hey Nintendo, can we borrow the source code to F-Zero? We just want to look at it, just to maybe get some tips and pointers. And then they just like slapped some other cars on the graphics and then like released a new game. Like
them and Tengen were buddies when it comes to that stuff.
So it plays very much like F-Zero. There's a lot more cars on the track. There's actually a pit stop, and it goes to like a cutscene where there's like the pit crew comes out. So it's a little more traditional in that way. The soundtrack is awesome. I mean, the intro just gives you a really good feel for how the soundtrack is. And I love Masanao Akahori's sound. And oddly, this soundtrack is not really exemplary of his sound, because I think it's because of this other guy that helped with it.
Okay.
What is his name?
Hiro Nakayama.
Yeah.
And his credits are basically just Guy Flame and Tetris.
Guy Flame?
Yeah.
Okay.
He did one of the ports of Tetris.
This track and the whole soundtrack has just a really rich, full, awesome sound. It's
lots of like orchestra hits, dancing
blood
beats.
Pumping,
Yeah.
Reminded me kind of like the Habariki's Popoito soundtrack. It has that same bass tone and the same percussion, but the instruments on top of that are a little bit different. But it has that same very frenetic, energetic feel to it.
Yeah.
It's got sort of like an awkward, like the point where it loops. The timing isn't quite.
Yeah.
It's
that like engine sound effect that comes in and everything kind of stops and the engine comes back in.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's the title screen, so I'm sure they're not expecting that you're going to be listening to it.
They're
ad
expecting you're in a
infinitum.
hit start super quick.
I was actually really close to picking the track from the first game.
That was good too.
Yeah, it got his more like traditional sound, and the loop is even more awkward in that one, which is one of the reasons I didn't go with it. Actually.
Oh, I wanted to hear it. We should have a whole episode based on games with awkward loops.
I was going to say we should have a whole episode based on tracks that you never end up hearing the full version of.
This is kind of like that kind of episode.
That would be kind of cool, because there's so many games that are like that. Where
like the Mega Man 3, the end of Mega Man 3.
Yeah. So the game's good? You dig it?
Yeah, I mean, if you like F-Zero, I mean, there's no reason you wouldn't like this game.
Yeah, it's like a F-Zero with story mode. Like you earn money, and then that money you like dump into this lab, and then the guy researches new parts for you, and then you upgrade your car.
There's a flux capacitor.
Yeah, and then you have to buy new tracks. Like it almost has like a microtransaction kind of feel to it, even though you're not paying real money for it.
One thing about it though is the music in F-Zero is one of the things that really adds to it. But there's no music during the races.
It's just engine sound.
That's always disappointing. Yeah. That's one of the things that when we were checking it out, I was like, that would...
It's kind of a bummer.
That would bum me out, and that would convince me to not buy the game.
Oh, really?
I would... In racing games, I need something beyond just the sound of the cars racing. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like, I get bored. So I'll need like something to kind of bop my head to.
Yeah.
While
especially
I'm
like when you hear a track like that, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to hear the music in the game, and it's just like revving engines.
Especially with a racing game, because you're just going in circles, or you're going through loops or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, yep, I'm racing.
There we go again.
Yeah, pretty much. Cool.
What
do we got next?
All right. Well, speaking of music that most people haven't heard all the way through. This is a track called the intro/menu music from Kingsley's Adventure, which came out on the PlayStation in 1999, composed by Alistair Lindsay. right, we're back. That was intro/menu music from Kingsley's Adventure, which came out on the PlayStation in 1999, composed by Alistair Lindsay. And I was talking right before we went into the song about how most people don't really hear this track, and that's because this track plays on this little tiny menu screen where you're like kind of inside this little castle area, and basically you're picking like load game, save game, or new game, and you pick one of your options. You might pick your control scheme, and then you're off to play the game. And it's a 4-minute track, and it's a fantastic track, and it starts off with that little like whistle kind of thing that goes on for like 30 to 45 seconds, and I would get the impression that most players would just think that that was the track, and they would just go on to the game and not hear the rest of the really cool stuff that comes in afterwards.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. So,
cinematic.
Yeah, well, what'd you think about it, Cam?
I mean, that's the term I think of is cinematic. It has a very like movie, kind of quality to it.
Like a medieval or Irish kind of
something epic is about to start. I don't really know much about the game. Does it fit the game pretty well?
It does. I mean, you're playing as this little fox who wants to become a knight, and it's very, very similar to a lot of the Rare games where you're kind of this anthropomorphic little cartoony creature. You're jumping and platforming around. Whenever you talk, speaking of Banjo-Kazooie, whenever you talk to somebody, it's like... Yeah, except it's even more annoying. It's like different sounds, and sometimes you have to talk to these birds in this area, and they all squawk at you, and it's like... Yeah, but it's not just one kind of squawk, it's like... Right. And they all have
I should go into voice acting for birds. Just birds.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a market for it.
Yes.
So yeah, that gets a little bit annoying, but the soundtrack is amazing. Alistair Lindsay has been a composer for a very, very long time, and he really knew what he was doing with this. I love how it gets very cinematic, and then those nice, really like Enya-style drum beats kind of come in, and then you get the low piano. It feels very, very calming and relaxing, but also kind of like it's building up to something at the same time. Yeah.
I love the drums in the beginning, the little some sort of bongo type of thing.
Oh, like the kettle drums?
Yeah, whatever that is. It's very, very nice, clean sound.
Yeah. What was your take on this one?
I did not like this track.
Really?
So, first off, it reminds me of something like if there was a PlayStation 1 Game of Thrones game, that's what this sounds like.
Yeah, okay.
The intro to a Game of... And
what's wrong with that?
Which is really frustrating because when I do watch Game of Thrones, I always want to skip the intro because I've seen it so many times and I get bored with it.
It's a long
It's
intro
super long, and I'm always like, all right, let's get on with the show.
Fantastic intro. But
oh yeah, but like once you've seen it once, or twice, even like the 5th time, you're like, okay, I'm done.
Skip it.
Just skip it. So that's kind of how I feel with this. I would hit start so fast.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I just not bad, not poorly composed or anything. But while I was listening to the track, after we finished, I was kind of like maybe at the 2-minute mark kind of checking out. I was like, all right, is this done yet? And I didn't really get an Enya vibe, personally. I don't know.
Just the percussion. I didn't mean the rest of the track.
Right. But I would say that I do get the Irish vibe from it. It does sound very like Irish, very folksy.
Yeah.
And
tribal. Kind of like a tribal tone.
Yeah, a little bit. At first it kind of had like a weird, like almost Japanese kind of setting to it, to the tone, but then as the track went on, it became more like Irish.
Okay, so sound. Yeah, it almost sounded like a shamisen, but then it kind of turned into what might have been like a bagpipe or something like that. Yeah, they can sound familiar.
Yeah,
or similar to each other.
Not bad, just not my cup of tea. So
right on.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
No.
Okay.
That we disagree? No, it never surprises anyone.
That Mike isn't keen on it. Yeah, right, exactly.
So a little bit about Alistair Lindsay. He's a British video game composer. He's the owner of Lindsay Audio Services Limited, and he's been freelance composing since 1999. His notable recent titles have included stuff like Prison Architect, Sir, You Are Being Hunted, Connectables for Rare on the Xbox. Yeah, that was one of the first Kinect games out there. Thrillville Off the Rails, Roller Coaster Tycoon series, and then he co-composed Jet Force Gemini way back in the day. Yeah. So, he does game audio direction, supervision and planning, sound design, sound effects creation, dynamic and linear music composition, dialogue recording, speech editing, and production. So you could basically hire him on as a freelancer to do like all the sound stuff for your game.
Cool.
And he'll get everything done from sound effects to dialogue to music and composition all by himself. So it's kind of like a one-man show. And, for this, I was kind of listening to this track with the ears of like a 1999 gamer, you know?
Okay.
So for that era, this music was really good.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, using...
The arrangement is impressive.
Exactly, and it's all keyboard,
Yes.
He's just using really good sound patches. I would love to have heard this, with a real live instrumentations. Probably would be even better than this, but for the kind of game it was, and for kind of a game that kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people because it was okay. It kind of suffered from non-analog control syndrome, where you had to use the D-pad and the camera would turn when you turned, and
Even
so
with
I
the
couldn't
DualShock?
really-
Even with the DualShock?
Yes, and it
Wow.
came out during the DualShock era, but it's
Oof.
still like they didn't have a separate control scheme for it, so
rough.
it was really tough to move around, which was kind of a bummer. But if you do see it on the shelves and it's cheap, it might be worth a pickup just because of the soundtrack if you like it. It's all digital audio, so you can throw it in a CD player and listen to it by itself if you wanted to.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's about all I got. What you got next for us, Mike?
Let's pump up the jams. This is Ninja Warriors on the Super NES. This is the opening and title theme. I kind of cheated a little bit because the title theme is like 30 seconds long and the opening's like a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's
They
the opening
work together.
sequence.
Yeah, they really work well together. Hiroyuki Iwatsuki is the composer, and also En Tate, who may possibly be going by Yasuo Yamate. We're not sure. We'll get to it after the break. Welcome back. That was Ninja Warriors for the Super NES. That was the opening and title theme by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki and Yasuo Yamate, possibly En Tate.
No, it was actually En Tate, possibly Yasuo Yamate.
Listen, he also goes by possibly Tate Norio. So
They both may or may not have been involved.
yes.
Well, yeah.
Hiroyuki Iwatsuki was definitely involved. This is his bread and butter right here, is just epic slap-based jams. And I love the opening, just that first initial part where they're kind of telling you the story about the Ninja Warriors. This is a kind of like reboot, I guess you could say, or a pseudo-sequel to Ninja Warriors on Sega CD or Mega CD.
It's a different game that takes place with the same universe,
Same
I guess.
characters
kind of,
and whatnot, right? So it's like a dystopian future in like the year 2035, and there's this military tyrant named Bangalore, and he kind of looks like Ganon a little bit, like kind of like pig-faced a little.
Yeah.
And so you could pick from one of three ninja androids or ninja robot
Terminator
ninjas. You've got the Kunoichi, who's the female ninja girl, pretty average. Then you've got the guy who's just called Ninja, and he's like super big and bulky, kind of like the Mike Hagar of the group, from Final Fight. Really strong, really powerful, but super slow. And then you've got Kamaitachi. I don't know. He's like the super fast robot who's got crazy combos. He's
got like scythes.
Yeah, like scythes on his arms. He's really cool looking. But it's a great game. It's a remake from what I understand, not a sequel.
Well, see, Daddy Mulk was the villain in the first one.
Right.
No. Daddy Mulk was the guy that made the ninjas in
Right.
the first one, but he doesn't even figure into the storyline for this
No.
one. So I don't know. People might call it a remake, but I think it's a separate storyline.
Daddy Moke.
I can't believe we're getting into Ninja Warriors canon here. But...
Daddy Moke left the Ninja Warriors behind. He was like, "All right, you've been built. Go do your thing." You know, kind of like a
like Dr. Light, just
yeah.
leaving behind all
He
his...
was just like, "All right, I'm out.
Mega Man and roll your
I
shit.
did
You're
this.
good,
I'm
got
out.
it."
I'm good." The both tracks combined together really flow well to one another. The first initial track kind of reminds me of something that you'd hear in like the Terminator movies, like really plodding, very like building, and you've got that just chunky like doo-doo bass line.
Chunky doo-doo?
Chunky doo-doo. Yeah, chunky doo-doo. And it kind of rolls into this awesome action-packed Japanese action music kind of style that I'm a big fan of, so it's good stuff.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I can't help but that first part is the Razor Ramones theme song.
Yeah, you were saying that, yeah.
If you were into wrestling in the 90s, that's so similar. That the beat is like exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the perfect show to play this track on because it's within context.
Yeah.
Like as a song by itself, I don't know if it really works very like.
That's why I picked it. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Because I've always wanted to play
Yeah.
these two tracks
So
together.
with that in mind, you envision kind of in your head an intro sequence playing over this music, and it makes much more sense. Yeah. And then the title screen music is great too. I wish it was a little bit longer maybe, or had kind of a loop to it, because it has a lot of energy to it. Maybe not looping, because I really like the way it ends too. It has that kind of echo and fade out at the end where it just sounds very
I feel like it should have looped,
bombastic.
but then the second loop, it should have ended with that.
Yeah. That's a very Natsume way to end music.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. So,
And, Hiroyuki Iwatsuki, like we've talked about him a million times, he was not best friends, though, with Iku Mizutani.
No.
We know that.
that's
much.
true. I'm clearly best friends with Iku Mizutani. He and I are tight. We are.
Not Iwatsuki,
Yeah.
but Mizutani.
Yeah, Mizutani's my man's.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys are pen pals.
You're right. Technically speaking, we were, because we emailed back and forth. So.
That's very true.
Yeah. So, great track, great game, a lot of fun. Cam, what did you think of the game?
I just played it for the first time last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I at first I was like, well, you there aren't a lot of moves. I mean, there aren't any combos. But over the course of a couple levels, like every couple minutes, I would do another move that I didn't know I could do.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I would, oh, cool. How did I do that? And
A lot of
it
it's
was
like
fun.
Street Fighter style moves.
Yeah.
Back toward.
It's got
or
like
circle.
it doesn't have the there's no like vertical motion. It's all like in a horizontal, like a fixed horizontal.
Yeah,
Right.
like
You know, with,
Russian
like-
attack kind of.
Yeah,
a deal.
yeah. With like Streets of Rage, you can kind of go up and down and left and right.
Right.
Like Ninja Turtles.
Or like Final Fight,
Yeah.
right?
And at
it's
first
all-
I was kind of like put off by that, but it works fine. It's really fun. I liked it.
It's more like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game that Natsume did as well. It's probably running on the same engine for the most part. The layout and everything visually is very like aesthetically the same as the Power Rangers fighting
Yeah,
games,
they're
like
just
the
smaller
beat 'em
characters.
ups. Right, smaller characters. I think it's more of a challenge in my opinion to have like a single layer level playing field
because you can't
just
avoid.
dodge and avoid.
You can't be as
enemies.
defensive. You're forced to be on the offensive.
Right.
In most
Yeah,
cases.
you pretty much are always on the offensive,
Yep.
and there's no real block, sort of. So you're just like, when can I get the best hits in?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Dodging away.
dodging and rolling. All right. So what do we got next? This is Cam's pick, right?
Yes, it is. This is one of my favorite games ever, Alundra on the PlayStation. If you like dungeon crawlers and Zelda-like games, I mean, this game is amazing. This is the title theme, which is actually called Alundra, and it just sets up the adventure of just a great adventure. It's a great track.
Cool. All right. Well, this one's by Kohei Tanaka.
Yeah.
Let's give it a listen.
So that was the title track from Alundra for the PlayStation by Kohei Tanaka. This game, I don't know where to begin. This is just one of my favorite RPGs, one of my favorite games.
Probably at the beginning.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Oh, I usually start in the middle. But...
Get it? Beginning, intro.
Gotcha. You brought it in. This track is not really, again, exemplary of the music in the game, per se. It's kind of its own sort of standalone thing, but I mean, there's no better song to like, as a prelude to like a grand adventure, like a game like Alundra. And that's immediately what I think of when I hear the track.
It's the castanets, right?
The castanets are great. I love it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a Spanish flair for this track at all.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of like Spanish or like, you know, that Hispanic kind of influence
really.
in the game itself?
Not really. I mean, it's... Alright, so the game is sort of typical character who... His memory is he has amnesia. He wakes up in a
Never heard that one.
Yeah,
before.
Like Adol,
every single
from
game.
Ys, you know, Link from Zelda, or pick a freaking action RPG
All
hero.
these adventurers with chronic brain trauma.
Right. That's a commercial waiting to happen. Do you have amnesia?
Chronic brain trauma.
Do you have a sword in your hand?
So is his name Alundra?
His name is Alundra.
Okay, and what does he do? Like, what's the storyline behind this?
There's a lot there. It resembles Zelda in more ways than one, for sure. So he has the ability to enter people's dreams. So someone will have some sort of conflict in their life. They'll be sick or they'll have some sort of problem. And Alundra, who is... I can't think
it's
of...
like Friday the 13th, the RPG.
Yeah, only a little less...
You're trying to help them not murder them.
A little less
Freddy Krueger as protagonist.
Yeah. I don't remember. There's a name. There's like a name that it's his destiny to be. I forget what the term is. But he goes into people's dreams, and each dream, it all centers around this one town, and the people in the town, he enters their dreams in different parts of the game.
Oh, neat.
And he has to go in, and each dream has its own dungeon. Really hard puzzles. This game is very, very challenging. Really challenging puzzles, which makes it very rewarding each time you finish a dungeon.
So the puzzles are kind of like
it's like move
allegories
blocks.
for roadblocks that the people have, like obstacles that people are facing. Or...
No. I mean, there's some of that, but mostly it's just like they're just puzzles in these dungeons.
Okay.
You know, you move blocks around. You have to match colors, read clues, and figure out crack codes and solve puzzles and stuff.
The thing you're talking about is a releaser.
Releaser, yes.
That's
the
his
releaser.
name.
Yes.
That's what he's called.
Yep.
So it's a spiritual sequel to Landstalker.
Yeah, Landstalker.
On the
Genesis.
Right.
Neat. I didn't know that.
Me neither.
Yeah, if you look, I mean, the character, even just the character design is almost the same.
What's really funny though is that he's shipwrecked on this island in the beginning near this village, and then the locals are suffering from these like nightmares that they're having, and that's when he goes in. He uses his dream walking ability. So
Okay.
But I just think it's really funny that we mentioned Ys, and we did a whole episode on Ys last time. And we were just talking about, being shipwrecked and having amnesia, and I'm like, wow, this is totally Ys. Like,
except Adol doesn't really go into people's dreams. So
he's even a red-haired dude, though. He's a red-haired elf.
Yep.
They literally took Zelda, like Link, and they were like, let's give him elf ears. All right, now, what color's his hair going to be? Oh, let's make it red like Adol.
Yeah.
All right, done. Perfect.
That's funny.
How can we make him shipwrecked and have amnesia? So the Alundra games, there was a second game as well. Right?
Yeah, a friend of mine played it. It's a very, very different game. The first game has, it's a 2D, like a Zelda game, like a Link to the Past style. And the second game was like a full 3D type of game. And it was, from what I heard, it had nothing to do with the original. The character's name wasn't even Alundra.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I don't even really understand why it was.
Probably what happened was the game sold very well. They probably only planned one game.
Slapped the name on it.
And they were like, let's make a sequel. Okay, what do you want to do,
I'm not even sure working designs had anything to do with the second one.
Let's see. It was developed by Contrail Production and Matrix Software.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing to do with it. Kohei Tanaka did write the soundtrack for the second one though, which is cool.
I haven't heard it.
So it might be something you want to check out.
I think I might want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also a sound producer on the game as well. So.
And Alundra, the first game, is another one of those, the working designs games with the artwork and The cover had that nice like foil.
Oh yeah,
sort of
yeah.
Right.
really beautiful.
It was done by
like
Working
lunar-
Design, so they really went all out. Even the discs themselves are collector's items because the discs have different art on the front.
Right.
So different depending on what you do.
It comes with a little map too.
Or what you have.
And they call it they say it's a cloth map, but it's not actually cloth. It's like linen paper.
Yeah.
Which is nice, but it's
I don't know. I really dig the music itself. It's good stuff. Like this initial. I actually thought that you were gonna play the intro track, which
the
is a very
opening
like
movie.
kind of Super Nintendo guitar kind of feel to
it's
it.
very different. That is even less
Sounding like the game. Yeah,
that's its own thing.
But with this track, it like reeks of Chrono Trigger to me. Like those horns.
Sure. Yeah.
It's very like Super Nintendo Chrono Triggery.
Yeah.
To me.
It definitely could have been an influence there.
Yeah.
I mean, Kohei Tanaka's been composing since 1990.
Yeah, I know he's done a lot of stuff. The only other game I'm familiar with that he did is Paladin's Quest for the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
He also worked on the Gravity Rush games too, which I love.
Right, we just talked about him when we played a track from
soundtracks.
Gravity Rush.
Yep. And Grand Stream Saga too, when we spoke about Grand Stream Saga.
Sakura Wars, Sakura Tyson. So he's done a whole bunch of other
Zardian,
stuff. So,
Just Breed, Dragon Half, good stuff.
If there were, I'd say maybe 3 games I would recommend for the PlayStation, that would definitely be one of them.
Alundra,
Yeah, so good.
Our buddy Bryan, who was on the, he's been on multiple episodes, but recently the Point and Click Adventures episode, this is like one of his favorite games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's good stuff.
He's got good taste.
All right, let's move on. Ed, what do you got for us?
All right, next up is an X68000 game released in 1991. This is the title theme from Star Trader, composed by a very familiar name, Mieko Ishikawa, and arranged by Koichi Yonayo. Alright, that was Star Trader, the title music from the game, released in 1991 on the X68000, composed by Mieko Ishikawa for the original PC-88 version and arranged for the X68000 by Koichi Yonayo. And I love this track.
I don't know what it is, but every time I hear a game with the word star in it, I immediately think it's like the name of the game should be pronounced like Star Trek. So it'd be like Star Trader, like.
Oh yeah. Do you expect the music to be like that too?
No,
or?
not at all. This track was
okay.
great. It was awesome. It's got that plodding bass that I love. That just like thick, meaty, ropey, tasty beef jerky.
I enjoyed it.
Ropey beef jerky. This is like the beef jerky of X68000 tracks.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I knew about the song and the soundtrack before I knew who composed it, And once I found out it was Ishikawa, I was like, wow, this does sound a lot like a lot of the more energetic songs from the Ys series, especially Wanderers from Ys.
Yes.
Definitely with that plotting bass, and those horn sounds are definitely straight out of a lot of the FM Ys tracks.
Yeah.
And really good use of stereo. I knew you were talking about that.
I really liked it. Was very tasteful too. Like it was just in the background, just enough stereo within the percussion.
Give it kind of a breadth of sound. Yeah.
Sounds really good in headphones.
Yeah, and a lot of those little bell tones would just go back and forth between the left and the right channel.
Yep.
And those FM sweeps, I love when they put them on two different channels and phase them out just slightly, so you get this really, really wide. It sounds like one instrument, but that it's kind of reverberating back and forth in your head. It's such a cool technique, and it really shows that people know what they're doing when they're working with the FM sound chips, when they can make something like that instead of just individual instruments.
A lot of X68000 music is a little bit more twarmpy sounding.
Yeah.
And this arrangement didn't sound like that as much. I was actually pretty impressed by the arrangement. It sounded like the X68000 all grown up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just like on the Genesis, there's a very wide range of quality between the X68000 tracks and games as well. It's a YM2151. It's actually really similar to the YM2612 that's in the Genesis. It's just got some better sampling capabilities, I think. I think the number of operators is the same too. So you can kind of make the same sounds between the Genesis and the X68000 without changing too much. So yeah, a lot of the composers that worked on this system ended up going on and making really good music on the Genesis, and then vice versa, because they can almost kind of port their music in between the two without too much issue.
Cool.
But yeah, I really like the fact that there's some nice percussion behind this without using those little
Right.
you get the noise channel going on the Genesis for percussion and other songs.
It almost sounds like a middle ground between the Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah, exactly. That sample channel helps a lot. And also when you get into the game itself, a lot of the background music uses that sample channel for little orchestra hits along with the FM, which you don't really hear on Genesis that much outside of Pisces Havoc or something like that. And even then, the sample quality on the Genesis, with Hyperstone Heist, yeah, you get instead of a nice rich sounding instrument. So, yeah, the original PC-88 game that came out was focused quite a bit on visual novel stuff. So you would get, artwork and lots of text about a guy traveling through space, going from planet to planet, basically trying to make money. Kind of like a Han Solo kind of a character.
Like a bounty hunter sort of
Yeah,
thing.
not really a bounty hunter, but more of a trader.
Scoundrel.
Yeah. Basically just
More
trying
like
to make a living.
More like a Malcolm Reynolds, if you've ever seen Firefly.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Perfect.
That's a much better way to put it. So, and then, as he goes between these space stations, he meets different, like I said, bounty hunters or pirates or etc., and he has to basically fight his way between ports so that he could trade his wares and make his living. In the X68000 version, they did away with a lot of that visual novel stuff, so you get kind of a visual novel deal at the beginning of the game, but then you go into these horizontal shoot-'em-up segments, and they just kind of cycle stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't have all this dialogue and dialogue trees that really didn't make too much of a difference. It was basically just going through the dialogue tree, seeing all the dialogue so you can get to the next stage of the game. And so they realized that really wasn't what people were going for when they bought this game, so they decided to just make the shooter out of it. And at least on the X68000, which is the only version I've played, it's very similar to Gradius in terms of feel.
Okay.
It's actually really playable. It's very fast-paced. The music is awesome, the graphics are awesome, and it was fun. It was really hard. I got to the third stage and couldn't really get past that. It's three lives and you're done. You're back to the title screen. So you got to really kind of memorize and get through as best you can.
Sounds like I die a lot.
Yes,
I would die a lot now.
I died a lot too, but I didn't mind because the music was really, really good.
That's how I feel about Tiger Heli? No, Twin Cobra? Twin Cobra.
Twin Cobra?
Yeah, great game on the Genesis, great soundtrack. That track is awesome, that level 1 track, but oh man, that game is difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely dying a lot.
Yeah, so if you're interested in X68000 games or using an X68000 emulator, Star Trader is definitely one of those games that you can play safely without having to worry about too much Japanese. Even when you go to the options screen to switch and look at the sound test and everything, all that is in English, so it's very easy to navigate.
Cool. So Mieko Ishikawa, we talked a lot about last episode, so go back to the Ys retrospective that we did, part 1. Check out that because we talked a lot about her. But Koichi Yonayo?
Yeah, we only mentioned him once so far on the show, way back on episode 24, which was our Sharp X68000 episode. He was an employee of Fill-In Cafe, starting with Neural Gear in 1990. But this port of Star Trader was created by Takeru, and it came out in 1991. So I'm assuming maybe he worked on this maybe like in 1989 or something before he started working for Fill-In.
Probably just because he had experience with the console. So,
yeah.
System,
so,
right?
and then he started with Neural Gear after this, but this game just happened to come out afterwards. With Fill-In Cafe, he wrote the soundtrack for Mad Stalker, which was the game that we did play on the PixelTunes Radio episode.
Oh, right. For the Sharp X68000 episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then a lot of work on the Asuka 120% Burning Fest series. He wrote the soundtracks to Maxima and Excellent. And those are really good, like fighting games,
right?
Yeah.
One came out on the Sega CD, but it didn't. It was like unofficial.
Yeah. Oh well, it came out officially, but then the designers of the game retuned it and then released it as an unofficial game, which was kind of cool. But those are definitely cool games that you could check out on the X68000 as well. He left Fill-In Cafe around 1997 and went freelance, composing games like Galgun, which just came out a little while ago.
Yeah.
And then last year he did the soundtrack for Azure Striker Gunvolt 2 in 2016.
Right,
Yeah, there was a sequel that came out.
Yeah, and he's still composing today. He had a song on the 8-Bit Music Power Famicom Music Disc. I played a track from that not too long ago. And he had a hand in developing and composing some of the demo tracks for the Korg musical workstation apps that came out on the DS.
Yep.
So he helped design that, and then he wrote some of the demo songs that are included.
Yeah.
And it's funny because his name was really familiar, and I was trying to find what... Like, I thought we talked about him on the show really recently, and I was going back through our notes, and I'm like, way back in episode... Like, it was definitely more recent than the X68000. But ironically, I played a track from him on an episode of Impulse Project I did when we introduced the NES sound chip because I was playing one of the songs from that 8-Bit Music Power disc that he composed. It was kind of funny. I was like, I would never think that I would be talking about Keiichi Yonayo on a demo scene podcast, but that's just how much he is into like chip music and stuff, that he's doing this stuff for the demo scene, he's doing stuff for video game music, he's doing stuff for music apps for the DS, so he's really into it, so he's a very cool guy to follow.
Nice.
Can I say one more thing about that track?
Sure.
To me, it sounds a lot more like a stage theme than an intro.
Yeah. Basically, while the song is playing, you're just getting like a scrolling wall of Japanese text that kind of explains and sets up the song. So there isn't even really any action on screen. Yeah. But that's Meiko Ishikawa. I mean, she's always like,
could be anything.
Yeah, her songs are always very, very energetic and stuff.
Right.
So, even like the title screen music and the intro music to Ys 3 was pretty rockin', even though it was just kind of like text on the screen. So, but yeah, this is definitely a soundtrack to look out for on the whole because it's got some great music in it.
Cool.
All right, what's next?
All right, we got Donkey Kong Country for the Super NES. This is the theme, the opening theme, and it's by Mr. David Wise, who we played way back on episode 23. Did a whole episode on him, so let's give it a listen.
My game froze again. Stupid NES front loader being so unreliable. That means I have to get up and reset the game. But I'm so lazy. What am I gonna do?
Hello there.
Ah! A scary ninja. Here, take all my money. I've got a few dollars, a semi-melted Kit Kat bar, and 6 random torn-out pages from the Kama Sutra.
What is wrong with you?
Hey, what can I say? I like to live dangerously.
No. I mean, what is wrong with you? You don't know who I am? I'm Ryu Hayabusa, and boy, have I got a fantastic product for you. Introducing Opening Bee here.
That doesn't even sound aesthetically pleasing, but alright.
When your game screen freezes and you want to start over, pull this small plastic pouch out of your pocket, open it up, smear some of the magic goo on your face, and voila! You're back at the beginning of the game in no time.
Wow! It sounds so easy.
Of course it is. It's promoted by me.
Awesome! Thanks, Ryu.
No problem, random kid.
Opening Bee here comes with all you see here. Magic goo requires 6 to 7 hours to properly dry on your face. Side effects may vary. Use only with retro consoles with releases prior to September 9th, 1999. No battery
Wait, this goo has to dry on my face for 6 to 7 hours? That's ridiculous. What's the point of that? I could just stand up and walk over and reset the system.
Hey, a ninja's gotta eat, right?
That doesn't even make any sense.
Ninja, out.
Alright, bringing back with the funk, Donkey Kong Country for the Super NES. That was the theme music, the opening, and that was by Mr. David Wise. Great track.
Yeah, basically a remake of the original Donkey Kong Country theme.
Right.
But kind of funkified and...
You've got that like NES opening.
Yeah.
It kind of comes in.
like
and
pseudo-NES.
I can't listen to this track without visually seeing the intro, because you've got...
The little music box.
Yeah, you've got Cranky Kong, who's the original Donkey Kong. He's turning the record player with the crank shaft, and it's got the little like speaker thing that kind of pops out of those old record players to play the music.
Yeah.
And then
Phonograph.
Donkey Kong kind of climbs up and he's like, "What is this nonsense? Here's a boombox." Boom. It's like totally
Stupid old people.
throwing out the old and bringing in the new.
The new being the boombox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then like Cranky Kong's kind of like climbing up and he throws the barrel, the TNT barrel, blows up the boombox, but the track kind of rolls into the title of the game where you've got Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong on the screen.
See, nowadays, if Donkey Kong Country were made today, it would
Yeah.
be Cranky Kong doing the same thing with
No,
the
it'd be-
phonograph.
it'd be Donkey
or he'd be
Kong.
listening, well, either way, the older character would be like listening to like a tape player or
Right.
like something like that.
Cassette.
And like
yeah.
instead of like, Donkey Kong coming in and like doing the whole funk
Yeah.
thing, it would just be like some slacker guy with like earphones would just walk across the screen.
Yeah.
And that's all
Looking
he
at
would
his
be.
phone.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be on his phone the entire time, like looking down while walking.
Exactly.
Walk right past him and he'd be like, "Who are you? What the hell's that?" Alright, whatever.
Rebellious youth is not a thing anymore.
No,
probably.
no. Well, I mean, like, even Diddy Kong back in the day was like, red-shirted monkey with a red hat. Like, nobody wears red shirts with red hats in 2017. Right?
Okay.
Nobody does that.
Mario.
Yeah. Even Dixie Kong. What girls walk around with blonde ponytails?
I know, God.
In whatever she's
Who has
wearing.
hair?
Yeah, who has hair, honestly.
2017.
Different time.
Different time. It's a different time.
The
The Donkey-
hair and everything.
Anyway, let's start making some sense.
Yeah.
Why did you pick this particular track?
It's just so iconic of video games. Like I mean, it's got that kicking out the old with the new feel to it, but it's got such a great vibe. It's a funky track. The whole soundtrack is just full of this like jungle funk, if you will. It's good stuff. There's no other Super Nintendo track that comes to mind aside from like the Ninja Warriors track we picked. But this track just reminds me of childhood. It's like total nostalgia overload for me listening to this track. And when I think of an opening music song and I think of what I should be seeing in my head, this track comes to mind. There's very few tracks that I could say honestly where if you say, "Do you remember the Donkey Kong Country theme song?" I immediately envision it in my head.
Right, you get a
know what I
visual
mean?
as well as an audio.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Like the visual pairing with that audio pairing is like it's so inseparable.
Right, because the music was so indicative of what was going on to the screen,
Right.
so they made sense together. It was like you know, a full cinematic experience. What was your opinion of the track, Kim?
I like it a lot. I mean, I've heard very few David Wise compositions that I thought were not at least very
Competent?
good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like it. I mean, I can't relate in the nostalgia way. I just played it last night for the first time.
Wow.
Never played Donkey Kong Country. I never played any of those 3 games, and I sucked at it hard.
It's got a very interesting physics. What am I trying to say
Physics?
here? Yeah,
Yeah.
he keeps momentum. He's got a very
Right.
interesting momentum.
Mike pointed out that you kind of need to be holding the run button, and I wasn't holding the run button, so that when he would jump, he just kind of went straight up and down, thinking I would be able to like clear a pitfall or something.
That's how you play Super Mario Brothers, man. You
Yeah, just hold
figure
the-
down on
hold
B
the
unless you
run.
want to
Yeah,
throw a
yeah,
fireball.
Exactly right. That's pretty much what it is. It's a interesting continuation of the Mario series, and it has a lot to do with Mario. So if you've played Mario and you know how to play Mario well, you'll kind of like develop this pattern of, okay, I've got to always be running and then jumping on enemies
And
you
all
know,
those
or rolling
secrets,
into them.
and
Yeah.
knowing
the
how to look
secrets,
for the
of course.
secrets.
Yes, yeah. I mean, having the game mostly memorized, playing through it, I just was kind of like, wait, where are the secrets? So it's like one of those things where I would just like jump in pits, like find the secrets.
Kind of like Doom. You know they're there. It
Yeah.
tells you they're there.
Yep.
Just gotta find
Gotta
them.
remember where they are. As far as the music goes, for me, yeah, I really do like the sound of the richness and fullness of this track on the soundtrack in general. I think Wise overdid it a little bit with the reverb on this whole soundtrack. I think that turns me off a little bit too.
And the monkey sounds.
And the monkey sound. Well, the monkey sounds I like. I mean, it fits
Yeah.
with the whole
It's
motif.
fresh. Yeah, it's different.
It's definitely appropriate for the soundtrack. But this particular track, I like the amount of percussion and how the stereo separation works out. And it makes you feel. It almost feels kind of cavernous in and of itself. Like you feel like the drums are way back and the instrumentation and the lead instruments are way up front. So I like that feeling of depth. You don't get that kind of tinniness that you get with a lot of the other less competently composed Super Nintendo tracks. So he did a very good job.
There's a vocal sample in there. Is it saying anything particular, or is it just kind of like...
You talking about the...
I thought they were just monkey sounds.
Yeah, just monkey
Just
sounds.
monkey sounds.
So David Wise, no stranger to the podcast. As we said, we played an entire episode's worth of content from him on episode 23. He's known for doing the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, Battletoads, Wizards and Warriors,
Time
all the
Lord,
games.
don't forget Time
Time
Lord.
Whoa, Time Lord.
Captain Skyhawk.
Captain
Oh, yeah,
Skyhawk.
Skyhawk.
A lot of the LJN games that were developed by Rare.
Yes,
were,
yeah, Who
his
Framed
work.
Roger Rabbit. Yeah, just he's done a lot of really solid work. He's one of our favorite composers here on the podcast. So
For sure.
great composer.
All right, let's move on to our next track.
What do you got for us, Cam?
So this is the intro title theme to Alien 3 on the NES by Euro Tell. Probably doesn't need much of an introduction, so let's get the track started.
Let's hit it.
Welcome back. That was the title theme from Alien 3 for the NES by Hiro Tell. And holy crap, I love that song so much. There's not one thing about it I don't like.
Except that it ends.
Yeah, the dude is a master of like that sound. I mean, you kind of always know it's him. He's got one of those sounds that's... There are other similar sounding composers, but to me, his sound is very, very recognizable.
It's funny because to me, this song sounds less like a lot of the other stuff he does and a little bit more like some of the Fallen Brothers stuff. Like especially Jeff Fallen, I get some of those little solo kind of things in there, and then that little dun 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 dun, and then the little chime thing. Like really, he like used that on Solstice for a lot of the level themes. So, but it's cool. I mean, that definitely means that I'm gonna like it, of course, because it's two of my favorite composers kind of like gelled into one another. So
it's the same sound effect that the Easy Bake Oven makes when it's done cooking.
Yes.
Bing. Spent a lot of time with the Easy Bake Oven, did you?
Totally. Making upside down pineapple cakes.
Sure, yeah.
Yes. Hiro Tell also wrote the soundtrack for the Easy Bake Oven.
Yeah. Okay, then. All right.
Hey, if Barry Leach can write music for Fisher-Price stories,
that's
then
true.
anything can happen.
Hiro Tell's music is always spot on when it comes to like NES and Commodore 64. This track is great. It's really, really good.
There are a few reasons I picked it. One is actually because the ending theme, I was so close to picking it for the last time.
Okay.
And I had to, I picked other things, whatever.
Yeah.
So this one, I love this track. I knew this was one of the ones I knew immediately I was gonna pick. And one thing I really love about it now, particularly, is I've kind of gotten to know Family Tracker pretty well, so I kind of know like how to make all the sounds in the track. So like now when I'm listening to it, I can hear all the different things. Oh, he's doing this or he's doing that. And like he does this thing with like some of the lead lines where it sounds like he's doing an arpeggio, but he's actually just playing the same note and changing the duty cycle.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, the note is the same, but it sounds like it's arpeggiating. But it's just
That's
he's
a cool
just hitting
technique,
he's just hitting the same note and changing the duty cycle. So it sort of sounds like it, like that main line in the beginning.
Yeah, I noticed those arpeggios don't really change key
like
or
the note
pitch
doesn't
so,
change.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part in the song they do, because there's a lot of arpeggios going on in that.
Right. Oh,
The Aliens 3 game has had some great composers attached to it for the different versions. I mean, we've got Hiro Tell here. We've got Matt Furness, who did the Genesis version, which that's personally my favorite, I would say.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Yeah. I wouldn't argue that.
Both are great.
This is my personal favorite.
Yeah,
but the Furness one is great too.
The Furness game, the Genesis game, is, I think, in my opinion, a better game than the NES version.
It's very much the same thing. Like the NES version and the Genesis version are, in more ways than not, are the same game.
Same type
the
of
Super
game,
Nintendo one, they went in a different direction. With that one.
Right.
Not keen on that soundtrack.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's a little bit more symphonic, if I recall.
What I think is funny about the NES one, it's a good game. It's like a really solid game. It's really hard, really fast paced. But I think because it's a LJN game,
right, gets a lot of flack.
I think what happened was it was ready to ship. They had finished the game. It was, and they were like, all right, looks like we got a good game. And one guy was like, you know what? This is LJN. So I think people do expect, something to kind of suck.
Right.
So they were like, all right, why don't we swap the jump and attack buttons?
There you go.
Right.
And then
it's the law of awesome.
Yeah,
remember?
and then people will kind of, they'll get what they expect.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is my only real gripe about the game, is it forces you to play backwards. The jump and attack, you're jumping with B, and it's...
See, that's one argument. One
but...
pro argument for emulators is that you can swap the buttons when you want to play the game.
Other than that, I mean, it's a good game. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
Or just hold the controller upside down. I mean, really, come on.
Then the left is
you play like
sit on your head.
Play the way
style.
Jimi Hendrix would have played.
Yeah, perfect. Behind your head.
Word.
Flip it upside down.
So Hiro Tell, we've played him before.
You played a Overlord track at some point.
Yes, the Game Boy game.
Yeah. He's done Smash TV, Golden Axe,
other things.
Yeah, we played him on the Golden Axe Commodore 64 port, which the track is great, game is terrible. So
yes,
he's done
sure.
tons and tons of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he was an old Commodore 64 guy, and he's also known as Wave from the group Maniacs of Noise, where he's done tons and tons of demo scene music. Him and Drax are basically the two leaders of that demo scene group. So
Winter Gold.
Oh, that was the SNES Super FX game that
Yes.
only came out in European countries. That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, just tons and tons of stuff for the Amiga, the Commodore 64. Not so much on as far as like the video game consoles that came out in the U.S. So Game Boy and NES, he did a couple here and there, but really only like licensed games that weren't really considered to be very, very good games. So.
I have a question you might know the answer to.
Answer's 5.
Why? Oh, could be. I don't know.
Sweet.
So, why is it that with the more Western composers are the ones to use to do all that arpeggio work? How come? Why is it that the Eastern composers almost don't do it at all?
Because that was a technique born on the Commodore 64,
Yep.
on the ZX Spectrum, because you can do that with wavetable. So they learned how to do that basically on consoles and sound chips because you don't really need to do that on FM.
So in
You
Japan,
can't do that with
they just
FM.
didn't really have a reference or precedent for it.
Yeah,
No one
exactly.
really
It
played
was a
with it.
style that came into play, and because mainly all of the consoles were FM based, or arcade systems were FM based over there, and even their demo scene was based on like from the PC-88, the Sharp X68000, all
Right.
that stuff. So they were mainly using the FM stuff, which is why you don't get a lot of really good FM composers in the West, so it's kind of like backwards. Like, Matt Furness is kind of like the outlier, and a couple of other,
Right.
British composers that were really good on the FM stuff. But yeah, so it's like, Japanese is very FM heavy, and European and American are very wavetable heavy. So,
Those arpeggios, they just add so much.
yeah.
I would think that would have caught on in some way. Like someone over there would have been like, you know what? I really want to work with this and try to, because it's so...
The only composer that I know from Japan that really used arpeggios a lot was Manabu Namiki. And so a lot of his works, like he did some like vertical shooter games, like I think it was Battle Gariga or something like that, where there was FM, but then they also had access to a PSG chip along with it on the board, and so he would do some arpeggiated stuff and then have some FM sweeps underneath. It was really cool, very unique sound to his work. But he's the only one that I can really think of that used that kind of technique.
I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff. Coming up next is the infamous title screen music from Buck Bumble, which came out on the N64 in 1998, composed by Justin Shavona.
What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumble. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumble. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumble. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumble. Bump to the boot to the boot to the boot boot. Bump to the bass to the bass bass. Bump to the boot to the boot to the boot. Bump to the bass to the bass bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the boot to the bump to the bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the boot to the bump to the bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the boot to the bump to the bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bump bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bump bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bump bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bump bump to the boot to the boot to the boot boot bump to the bass bass. Bump to the boot to the boot to the boot bump to the bass bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the bass. Bump to the boot to the bump to the boot to the bump to the bass.
And welcome, that was Buck Bumble, came out on the N64 in 1998. That was the Buck Bumble theme by Justin Shavona.
Why?
Why? Because you played MC Kids, that's why.
I didn't play MC Kids. I played Global Gladiators.
Because you played MC Gladiator, or you played Global Gladiators, that's why.
It all blends together.
It all blends together.
And you were saying DK Rap is my fault.
And DK Rap.
That's not my fault. That's Todd's fault.
Todd suggested it, but you voted for it. I did not vote for it.
Listen, I am not the greater of two evils here. It is clearly Todd's fault.
We'll blame it on Todd.
Yeah, let's
works
blame
out.
just blame everything on Todd. That works. Let's just do that. So this is Todd's fault.
Perfect.
Cam, what do you think?
Bum to the boov to the bass.
Yeah.
It's pretty much.
Bum to the
biggity bump bumble.
To the biggity buck bumble. I just like how he's
Oh,
like he the biggity buck bumble. Like what's going on here?
Think about it.
Like
a
he's
little bit.
realizing it as he's saying
He's
it.
like,
oh.
boom to the bass, boom to the
Yeah.
biggity buck bumble. I also wrote down because I couldn't figure out what he was trying to say, and I believe you pulled up the lyrics. But before you divulge the actual words,
Would probably make less sense than what you have written down.
Probably. I wrote down, it's the Makte Ula table. I also wrote down, it's the messy Ula cake.
I like that one.
And I also wrote down, it's a Macdead Gula bake.
Gula bake.
Gula bake.
Sounds like a French dessert.
Yeah.
I
I'll
definitely
have
hear
the gula
table
bake.
in
It's
there.
this the Makte Ula table. Or, it's the messy Ula cake. Or, it's a Macdead Gula bake. Hey.
According to the internet, it is Leche Munda Mula Dip.
Okay. What does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe it's
Leche is milk.
No, but it's
isn't it?
it's Le Shay.
L
It's like
Leche.
two words.
S-H-A-Y. It
Okay.
might. It sounds like it might be like French pronunciation, or maybe it's native Jamaican or something like that.
Oh, maybe.
I don't really know.
That's a good point.
I doubt it's English. Is what I'm trying to say here.
The point I'm trying to make is, what does that have anything to do with buck to the bumble?
That's just fun.
Biggity buck.
It could just
bumble.
be like onomatopoeia. Like it doesn't actually. It's just fun sounds.
It's just
to say with
rhythmic.
your mouth.
Like,
yeah,
He's
exactly.
just so gentle with that bumble. He's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
biggity buck bumble.
Yeah, yeah.
Bumble.
It's a fun song.
You're a fun
And,
song.
actually, if you go on the
Nice.
web and look for opinions of this track, you'll see Americans absolutely hate it, but the British absolutely love it. Like, this is the music they were listening to
Sure.
in '98, like garage house,
Yeah, I
like
read
all that kind of music that was out at the time.
I read somewhere in one of the comments that somebody was like, "Oh, they used to play this song at the clubs."
Yeah,
and
see,
I'm like,
It's
"Why would you do that?"
The percussion is 90s dance.
Absolutely,
Every,
absolutely.
every song that came out at that time.
the
had
stuff that
exact
Yuzo Koshiro was listening to when
Yeah,
he
yeah.
made Streets of Rage and all that. So
Yeah.
or Adventure Island, the one that he did.
yeah.
This game is not
Yep.
great.
No, the game is. You know what? Where do I start with the game? I mean, it was made by Argonaut Software.
Right.
So right
Great
off the
developer.
bat, you were like, "Oh, cool!" And it's like a free-ranging, like shoot 'em up
Mm-hmm.
kind of a game. So you're expecting it to be kind of like Star Fox, but not on rails.
Right.
And they have this pedigree of doing this kind of game. X on the Game Boy. You know,
Yep.
they developed that, and if they can make an awesome 3D game on the Game Boy, well, imagine what they can do on a system dedicated to 3D. Oh no, did not work out.
Wah, wah.
Well, it was plagued by development troubles,
Mm-hmm.
and it was rushed out before Christmas came out.
That's a shame.
So
I remember being excited about this one.
everything that I kind of like dislike about the N64 is kind of like what's wrong with this game. Like huge amounts of fog, bland brown, blurry
Mm-hmm. Everything's
textures,
yellow and brown.
Sluggishness
Yeah.
maybe in the
Controls.
The-
I heard the controls are a big problem.
Yep,
Yeah.
that too, and the slowdown.
Mm-hmm.
You go into these underground levels every once in a while, and like when you get down there, literally no fog. Everything's running like a good 30 frames per second.
Sure.
But then as soon as you get to the overworlds, everything just kind of falls apart.
That sucks.
And the gameplay wasn't tweaked to the point where like there's only 20 levels in the game, but if you know what you're doing, you get your mission, you can like make a literal beeline for where you can avoid all of the enemies. You can pick up whatever you need to bring to point B. So you start off, you grab the thing, you bring it to point B, you drop it off, you beat the level right there. You can beat it within like 30 seconds.
Wow.
Everything else around you is completely
It's a
vestigial.
waste of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it just wasn't designed well. Definitely felt like it was rushed. So it's unfortunate. The soundtrack is good though. I mean, aside from Buck Bumble, whether you like it or not, the rest of the soundtrack has a very nice dance feel to
Okay.
it. For the N64, it's really good stuff.
No more
and it's worth
lyrics?
a listen. I don't think there are any more lyrics for the rest of the. Not that I've heard anyway. Maybe the ending theme might have some lyrics, but not during gameplay.
Biggity buck bumble.
See, it's gonna be stuck in your head for the rest of the day.
I'm just gonna be walking around mowing my lawn, being like, "Bop bop bum."
Every time I see a bee now, I'm gonna be like, "Biggity buck bumble."
Look at that little biggity buck bumble.
Little bee.
He's such a cutie.
I actually kind of like the idea of the character. Like, I think it's sort of like a catchy sort of
Yeah.
idea.
So the plot of the game is that humans were polluting. The planet takes place in London.
Right.
So pollution has turned a lot of the animals into like mutants.
It's like Animal Toxic Avenger.
And so, right, they formed this organization called the Herd, and so they're trying to take over the garden that they live in, and then later on the world. So there's this other organization that gets together, and they outfit this bumblebee buck with this kind of like cybernetic helmet and this outfit
cool.
and everything. Yeah, he's really cool. He's not cartoony like I expected him to be for this kind of a game. And so they send him out as like a one-man army to go, destroy all the evil mutant, and then eventually, I guess, somehow clean up the planet or get rid of the pollution. Like, I didn't get that far into the story to determine.
They put his armor on him, and they took one look at him, and they were like, it's the messy Ula cake.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, interesting game to check out if you see it on the shelf for a couple bucks. Bumble, but it's not
Biggity bucks. Bumble.
But, not a game that you'd want to pay full price for.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So
it was an allegory in there, like the pollinators are going to save the planet.
It's true.
It's true.
Save the bees, because without them, the world is screwed. Mm-hmm. Even though I hate bees.
Bees.
I just don't want them near me.
Bees?
Bees.
So tell me about the composer.
The composer, Justin Charvona, he is otherwise known as Justin S. He's created audio for over 50 games, starting way back with the Amiga. His first game was Quasar in 1989. Some other notable Amiga games are Robozone and Predator 2. In 1994, he hooked up with Argonaut Software, and he composed the music for Vortex on the SNES, Ren and Snippy Fire Dogs, Creature Shock, FX Fighter, some of the games in the Croc series, some of the games in the Alien series, speaking of Alien 3, some of the Harry Potter games, Malice, and then some of the games in the Lord of the Rings series. So he went from like this dancey stuff to a lot of the more cinematic soundtracks in like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. So he's got, quite a repertoire. Nowadays, he's a pop music producer, so he's created remixes for artists like Katy Perry, Jordan Sparks, and the Backstreet Boys and stuff.
God.
So that's where this kind of music kind of fits in. So I guess he has two sides to him, where he can make cinematic orchestral music, but also this very poppy, dancey stuff.
I really want to hear the Backstreet Boys cover this song now.
Biggity Backstreet Boys.
You'd be like, ooh, it's the Macteula table.
Ooh, girl.
It's the messiula cake of my heart. Girl. All right, let's move on.
Please.
This is ridiculous. Let's bang some heads. It's Contra Shattered Soldier on the PS2. This track is called Venus. It's the opening cinematic music. And it's by Sota Fujimori and Akira Yamaoka. Ow, my neck! That was Contra Shattered Soldier for the PlayStation 2. That track was called Venus, and it's by Sota Fujimori and Akira Yamaoka.
Biggity Buck Contra.
Right about time, it's time to break necks. Biggity.
Shattered soldier.
Well played. Great stuff. I love this like industrial metal, like chunky guitar sound to it. It's just rough. It's rough and nasty. I dig it. It's this is one of the first video game soundtracks that I bought with my own money. I was working at Game Crazy, and a good friend of ours, this guy Eric, had the know-how to get import soundtracks, and I mentioned to him,
called the internet.
Yeah, I know. It's just wild. But this was, you got to keep in mind, this was back in like 2003, I think, 2002, 2003, around that time. And I knew a lot about the internet, but like I didn't know of a lot of like import sites.
Makes sense.
That you couldn't like just couldn't translate anything. There was no like. I think back in the day there was no Google Translate, so it's not like you could pull up any Japanese page.
Babblefish, I think you might have been able to go to, but that wasn't known by everybody.
Yeah, so it was a little bit harder to import stuff back in the day, I would say. And I had picked this game up. This was the first game that I got. I bought it used with a PlayStation 2, and I got... It's a long story, but basically this was the first game that I got for the PlayStation 2. And I didn't really know that much about it. I knew it was Contra, I knew it had a cool soundtrack, and I knew it was a good game. It got very good reviews, and it was a return to form for the Contra games. It was built by the same team that did the Alien Wars and like Hard Corps and all that. So it was kind of a 2D continuation. It wasn't the mess that was those PlayStation Contra games.
Right.
We talked about this quite a bit on the Contra episode that we did way back in like, what was it?
Man.
Like
18 or something? It was a long time ago.
14? I can't remember, but it was a long time ago. And
still one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a great episode. So if you like Contra, go back and check that one out. But this track just... It plays during the opening cutscene, and you kind of don't know what's going on.
It's just action-packed.
Yeah, well, initially, what ends up happening is Bill Reiser, the main hero in Contra, is locked away for his crimes, I guess you could say. And so this girl shows up, gets him out of his chains. He kicks down the door. The girl is actually a robot. She's a cyborg. She's the person who you play as like the player 2. Her name's Lucia. And so he kicks down the door, and right from there it kicks into this like awesome like heavy metal track. And it's just like ridiculousness. From then on, it's just total ridiculous. It's such a good game.
So good.
Yeah.
So, but the song itself reminds me a lot of songs from the Quake series, like Quake 2.
Okay.
Maybe even Doom a little bit, especially Doom, I think, because those open chords, like at the end, like da 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 da, like reminds me of like the first level from Doom, especially when you get the right like MIDI sound fonts going. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, this whole soundtrack is. It's weird that both of us really agree that the soundtrack is awesome.
I'm surprised that you.
Well, there's a lot of industrial stuff in it too. It's not.
There's trance elements in it. The whole soundtrack is full of a lot of variety.
Exactly.
It's not just metal. It's like a mix of dance and metal and electronic trance. Like there's some really cool elements.
Like Akira Yamaoka did most of the metal stuff, and Sota Fujimori was more of the electronics guy. So he did a lot of the dance stuff. And then once in a while, they would kind of like intersect with each other and create some really cool like dance metal kind of stuff.
Right.
And it really like, held my attention the entire way through.
Yeah, I dig it. You like it?
For sure.
I actually can like sort of listen to this in a different way because being a guitar player, I'm not much of a metal guitar player, but a lot of the chord structures and stuff in that song I can identify with because I use a lot of that stuff. There's like that one dissonant chord. It's got like a flat fifth in it or something. I'm not really good with theory, but I can kind of like hear exactly what's going on. And I guarantee that track, that riff, like that guy picked up the guitar and just started playing that riff. Like it didn't take anything. That's the sort of riff that when you pick a guitar up, you just kind of start playing. It's that I guarantee there was a half hour of work for that.
Sure.
To make that song.
Which is great to think about it. When you're thinking of Akira Yamaoka and his legacy. I mean, we talked a lot about him on the Silent Hill episode with Avalanche Jared, episode 73. Check it out, especially this time of year during the Halloween time. Great episode. So we talked a lot about Akira Yamaoka and his wide knowledge of music. So it makes sense that he would just pick up a guitar and just rack out this like totally metal.
Yeah,
it's simplistic,
very
but
simplistic,
it's also
but totally works for what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Just throws you right into the guts of it. Just
right.
Like,
Yeah, and this is a dirty, scary game. I mean, there's just so much grotesque
disturbing at
stuff.
times.
Yeah. Like one moment in particular that I always remember is there's this monster, this like gross monster that's like spitting out like on this like
The face
conveyor
train
belt. No, like the conveyor belt on the top. It's like level 3, and he's like spitting out like spiny eggs on the conveyor belt that's rolling towards this.
Lakitu.
The one with the meat grinder at the end?
Yeah, the meat grinder. So like there's this meat grinder at the end, and then when you beat him, he like squirts out all this green blood and he falls, and then he's on the conveyor belt and you watch out for him. He gets grinded up by the meat grinder, and then he just gets spit out. And then when you move on to the next section, the next room, you see like all that meat just like in this pit. And there's this other monster, dragon monster, that's eating that meat. So it's just like super disgusting and weird to think about. But this whole game kind of goes back to that idea of Contra having not like a full level of enemies and they're just like mostly grunts like the first Contra game. It kind of brings a return to form where it's like you get all these like mini bosses and the whole game is just
like
made
a boss
up of
rush.
It's like the whole level is just boss rush mode, and then you get to the boss and it's just ridiculous. It's a great game.
I noticed a similarity with the Twisted Metal series because they kind of went back like to the original sort of team, sort of like they did with Contra. They made the two first Twisted Metal games, and then 989 Studios took over the series, and it kind of went a little weird. And then the original team went back on Twisted Metal Black, and it got really disturbing. Like it's sort of in the same way that Contra did.
Yeah.
Like, return to form, like to the extreme kind of.
Oh,
sort of
definitely.
thing.
Because I mean, like the original Contra games were also very like grimy and dirty and creepy, a lot of alien stuff and creepy aliens. So it makes sense for them to return to that kind of style. And that kind of continued into Neo Contra, where it just got ridiculous, like totally goofy with like baby heads coming out of plants. And, running.
They just let their imagination
dinosaurs.
run wild.
Oh,
like, whatever
totally.
they wanted to do, they were like, throw it in. It's gross, cool.
They were like, well, you know what?
Does it involve babies and meat? Put it in.
do you think they should run on the helicopter blades? Like, actually run on them?
I mean, they've already hung on missiles, so may as well.
Yeah, they've already been spinning on missiles as they get shot out of cannons, so sure.
And they never slow down. They go from a helicopter to snowboards, off the snowboards, off onto
ridiculous.
tanks.
To motorcycles.
Love it. So did Fujimori also worked on Neo Contra as well. In fact, that soundtrack's more dance-oriented.
Yeah,
so if you
exactly.
like the dancey stuff...
And he did a lot of the Beatmania stuff, too.
Right.
Obviously, dancey stuff. So.
Yep. So great game, great soundtrack, great composers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's move on to another great game, great soundtrack, great composers.
Very different, though.
Yes, totally different.
Quite.
What do we have?
So this is the Never-Ending Adventure, which is Rush's theme from Dark Cloud 2 for the PlayStation 2 by Tomohito Nishiura. That was Never Ending Adventure from Dark Cloud 2, also known as Dark Chronicle Across the Ocean, by Tomohito Nishiura for the PS2.
To clarify, the game isn't called Dark Chronicle Across the Ocean.
Right.
The game in other regions is
Across
called
the
Dark
Ocean,
Chronicle.
it's known as Dark Chronicle.
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Had to clarify that.
Yep.
Dark Chronicle Across the Ocean sounds like a pretty good subtitle.
Yeah, right?
So it has in parentheses, it's Rush's theme. Honestly, I have no recollection of a character named Rush from the game.
No? Not like a robot dog or anything?
No, I don't think it's really a...
Or Geddy Lee on guitar.
Right.
You know.
Every time that Rush, the band, plays, they come out to this song.
That would have been a cool cameo in the game. This great game is fantastic. I don't know if either of you have played either. I don't know how I managed to get 3 of my favorite RPGs in this episode, but that's pretty awesome.
Cheater.
This is definitely one of my favorite RPGs. It's very overlooked. I think a lot of people don't really.
It's an action RPG, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It came out during the time when cell shading was, big.
Yeah.
And I think was one of the first ones to do it on the PS2 anyway. It's a huge game. Kind of revolves around sort of a hub town, but you never run out of things to do in this game. There's like all kinds of little like side things you can do and weapons to make and games to play and stuff.
I specifically remember this game because the story that I've told a million times of the Silent Hill 2, where like it was super creepy, and then I was watching my friends in college play the game, and then one of them busted in the room when I was fixing one of my action figures that fell off.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Caught you playing with your dolls." So
No, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
Yeah. So this was the other game that he bought that day. He bought Silent Hill 2 and Dark Cloud 2. And both games were just like, I remember the next day going back in and checking out what he was playing, and he was playing Dark Cloud 2, and I remember watching him play it and was like, this is really cool.
It's great.
It's really visually very spectacular. It's, like the anime style for the characters, but, the world itself is very big, very open.
I never really thought it was particularly anime
Really?
inspired.
Like the characters themselves?
Yeah.
I always thought they were anime style characters.
I mean, maybe it is. I mean, maybe I just my concept of anime doesn't. It's very narrow, maybe.
Yeah, it's anime style, but it's not like the traditional tropes of anime. So
Yeah. I love the cover art too.
Oh yeah,
Kind of
definitely.
anime.
Yeah.
Kind of anime,
But it's not
I'll
like
go with that.
overly cutesy. Like,
Yeah.
I can kind of see where you can kind of like consider them anime and not anime at the same
Right.
time. Yeah.
So if you're not really familiar, you really don't need to play the first one to play the second one.
Good, because I'm not gonna.
They have it has a portion of the game has sort of like an ActRaiser sort of feel where you're
Vehicles look really cool.
yeah. The first one doesn't really explain a whole lot. You just kind of like do a dungeon and then you construct the towns.
The first one was labeled as a Zelda killer by Sony.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. When it came
Was
out.
not.
It was not. No.
Turned out to not be so much.
No.
So in the,
Zelda nudger maybe, but definitely didn't kill.
it looked at it with a lowered eyebrow.
Stink
but-
eye.
Yeah, right. Yeah. In this game, it works it into the story where you control this vehicle and you collect georama, which is this stuff you use to create the things you use to build the towns. And not only are you building the towns, you're rebuilding the past. So like as you uncover the past, you're reconstructing the towns where these things happened, and then you bring the characters back and you learn things from the characters, the history of the towns.
That's a neat
and stuff.
concept.
And the story is really good. It works really, really well, and it's really fun.
Tomohito Nishihura has worked on quite a lot of like RPGs. He worked on sound support for Dragon Quest IX, which you'd be happy to know. Some of the Professor.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I can see.
Yeah, Professor Layton, like almost all the Professor Layton games up to the one with Phoenix Wright.
Yeah, those have fantastic soundtracks too.
Yeah. And then Rogue Galaxy, he was the composer on that. That is where I'm getting because this song specifically, when we played it and I was listening to it, I kind of closed my eyes and I was kind of envisioning, like, I was getting very strong Xenoblade Chronicles feels to it.
Okay.
And I was like, did Yoko Shimomura work on this? Because she did the soundtrack to that. And turns out no, it's Tomohito Nishihura. So yeah.
I love that intro track.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's just so sweeping and grand.
It plays over a like a cinematic intro with no like story. There's no like
just characters
yeah.
doing
It's just
random
it's just
things.
like shots sort of from portions of the game
Right.
kind of like chained together with the music playing. It's really
It's
cool.
cool. I feel like it has a little bit of a parallel with the Kingsley's Adventure sound
Yeah, a little
track.
bit.
It was kind of like a old world feel
Yeah,
with more
yeah,
of
yeah.
a modern kind of aesthetic to it.
Actually, if we can reference Firefly more than once in this episode, there's actually a part of the music reminds me a little bit of the music from Firefly. It's not like you wouldn't really hear it in there, but there's something about it that's similar. And I'm a huge Firefly fan, as well as a Dark Cloud fan.
Cool. So
Right.
it's even more stuff to like about
I
it.
like it. I like it a lot.
There's a pretty big item creation or weapon creation.
Oh yeah, big time in this
feature
game.
in this game. And if I recall, that was one of the biggest reasons why it turned me off from playing this, because it was too in depth.
Right. Well, the thing that I like about it is with certain games, they make it so like you have a weapon for a while, then oh whoops, it breaks or something happens.
I hate that. Yeah.
But with this game, it's worked into the mechanic of the way the weapons work. It's worked in so much that you're kind of doing it constantly, so it becomes sort of part of the game as you're playing. So you have to maintain the weapons, and like your weapons get weaker and weaker. You have to repair them, and it happens sort of like on a regular basis. It's not just like I love this weapon and then all of a sudden something happens. Like
Like
you
Breath
just
of the Wild.
you can just keep working at
You're
it.
turning me off on this game, Cam.
And you can always there are so many weapons you can create in it. And you have the two main characters.
Yeah.
One uses swords.
It's like a boy and a girl, right?
Yeah. Monica she uses the sword,
Okay.
and Max uses a wrench. His weapon is a wrench.
That's right. Yeah.
And you can create all these crazy wrenches that they're like battle wrenches. So
Yeah.
you have
battle wrench.
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, you have each character has a short range weapon and a long range weapon. So Max has a gun that he can upgrade. And to one of my favorite things about the game is it has this thing where an invention system where you have a camera, you take pictures, and
Right.
you use the pictures to get ideas.
Yep.
And then when you can put three pictures together, and if you put the three right pictures together, you get an idea for an invention.
Oh, that's really cool.
And then you make the invention, and then you invent all of your
Right.
items and all of your weapons.
It's a little bit
it's
like
really cool.
It's a little bit like Beyond Good and Evil.
Oh, okay.
What were you gonna say? Buff Bumble?
Fatal Frame.
Oh, Fatal Frame. Yeah, that's true. Fatal Frame
You
as
know,
well.
take pictures of 3 ghosts and you invent a new ghost.
Right.
Right, yeah. There's not a lot of slow points in the game. There's a lot of action, and when there's not a lot of action, there's a lot of story. So I think you would like it. Like if
I
you dove
remember
in.
watching my friend play it in college and really getting into it, like digging it. I thought it was really cool, but I didn't like the item creation. That kind of turned me off, if I recall. I thought the story was cool and the characters were neat, but yeah, that's what I thought.
I can see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to Ed's pick. What do you got for us?
All right, next up is Patchwork Heroes. This is a track called Holding 1 Million Tons of Bravery from Hideki Sakamoto.
That's a lot of bravery.
A lot of bravery. Hey, if you like Katamari tracks, you might enjoy this one.
Word.
Let's hit it. And we're back. That was Holding 1 Million Tons of Bravery, composed by Hideki Sakamoto off the PSP game Patchwork Heroes, which came out in 2010. I enjoyed this one. I like the marching feel. Like, even before the vocals came in, I was kind of really entranced by it. And then the vocals came in, and they were like marchy, but then as it went on, it started to feel more like a Katamari song, and the harmonization came in, and everything was just really kind of bombastic and fun, and I loved it. What'd you think, Cam?
Love it. Actually, I have to say, when I first heard it, I thought, oh, this is really cool. And then the vocals started, and I was like, like it lost me, because I typically don't really like vocal.
Me too, yeah.
And then when like that chorus part comes in, the melody is great. So I immediately was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And that bouncing tuba, I mean, I love that harmony in the chorus is really cool. I love the melody of the song.
Yeah, and even if you don't understand Japanese, I feel like there's enough melody in the vocals,
for sure,
so you can kind of consider that an extra instrument that goes along with
I actually thought when it first starts, those horns are very reminiscent to like a Tim Fallon Super Nintendo sort of.
Okay.
When it first started, I thought that's immediately what I thought. It was like, oh, this is kind of like a clock kind of thing.
I got a very like Sgt. Pepper's vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I dug the horns. That was my favorite part.
Yeah.
I like the horns.
Good stuff.
I will say though that right at the end of the track, it kind of like gets a little bit too repetitive. It says, bah, 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 and I'm like, okay.
I like.
And then they do it again and again
and
again, and I was like, okay, guys, I'm done. So, but I dug it. I really like the Japanese vocals. Kind of threw me for a loop because I wasn't expecting that, and when it came in, I was like, oh, okay. And that's kind of what made me think of Katamari Damacy. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I got that feeling. Have either of you guys played this game?
Nope.
Oh, this is like one of those undiscovered gems on the PSP. It's so good. So the premise of the game is that you live in this town. It's kind of like a pre-industrial kind of town. There's lots of mills and like ironworking is just starting off. And the town gets invaded by these bad guys, and they use these giant iron warships to basically fly over the town and to destroy buildings and such. So you get this team together and you launch yourself onto these warships. And have you ever played like those arcade games in like MAME or whatever, where you get this like solid square of colors and you have to like move your character like in a line, and like every time you like make a full square,
a portion of the map disappears.
Exactly, it plays just like that.
Oh, really?
So you're climbing on these warships, and you're like chopping lines through these warships. And as you complete a line, a portion of that warship falls off.
Oh, that's cool.
And your score depends on how many tons of warship you chop off, and you get extra bonuses. But of course, the warship has like guns and like mechanical spiders and stuff, so you really have to avoid those portions, avoid getting hit, and create these lines and basically chop these warships to pieces. And then at the end of it, you see like what's left of the warship like come crashing down to the farmland next to the town. Really very, very cool game, very unique premise, kind of taking that old school arcade style game and like making it into kind of more of a modern aesthetic. And the graphics are very cool. They're all kind of like hand drawn, like things look like they're like patchwork quilts and stuff. I guess that's why they call it Patchwork Heroes, but kind of like Yoshi's Woolly World, like that kind of feel to it, but in 2D graphics. It's really a game worth checking out.
Yeah, I've never even heard of this one, so I'll have to check into it.
There's a Shadow of the Colossus parallel in there somewhere, and I'm having trouble like putting it to words. So,
well, you're taking down these giant, giant warships,
and it collapses sort of in slow motion.
Exactly. It's got that same kind of a feel of one tiny person, or in this case, like 3 or 4 tiny people taking down a giant titan, more or less. So, but yeah, if you do like Shadow of the Colossus and that kind of feel that you get playing that game, then this would definitely be
I might love this
for
one.
you. From what I've seen, like all the menus and stuff were all in English.
Really?
I was playing the ROM and I had no problem.
Is it PSP only?
But yeah,
it is PSP only. But PSP is region unlocked anyways, so you can play games. I mean, if it's got an English translation, then you're good to go. But I couldn't find any information on a US release, so.
Yeah, no, it did come out in the US.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, cool. Must be really rare, because I could not find a lot of deets.
Yeah, I think it's available on PSN too, so you can always get the digital download if you want.
Digital.
Gross. It's also on the PSN network, so if you have a Vita, you can also download it and play it too, so that opens it up to a few more people that don't have dozens of old PSPs laying around like I do. So a little bit about the composer Hideki Sakamoto. He started off in 1998 as an employee of Will Company Limited. He created soundtracks for games like Juggernaut on the PlayStation for Jalico, the Game Boy port of Daikatana, which I heard is actually really good.
It is really good,
It has a really good soundtrack, too.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mech Platoon on the Game Boy Advance, also for Will Company Limited. After that, he jumped around a lot. He started working for developers like Namco, Capcom, and now Production Company. He created the soundtracks for Spectrobes, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, Valkyrie Profile, Covenant of the Plume, Echochrome. He was the music director on Castlevania Judgment, and then a whole bunch more. His last title, he did sound effects for 7th Dragon 3 Code VFD in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I think 7th Dragon, that was Yuzo Koshiro. I think he did the soundtracks for those
I think he
games.
did the soundtrack for the 7th Dragon
so
series.
he's working with some big names there. But,
Cool.
really, really cool stuff. The whole soundtrack is kind of like this without vocals. It's, very bombastic kind of feeling. You get these big triumphant fanfares whenever you destroy a warship. So the sound is as much fun as the game is.
I might get a PSP just so I can play it.
Yes.
Sounds like fun.
Probably worth it.
Definitely. So our final track is from Arcus Odyssey. It's on the Sega Genesis, and this is the opening music, or an opening cinematic, which kind of rolls into the title theme, actually. Take a listen. It's by Motoi Sakuraba, and that is it. All right, that was our final track of the podcast. Arcus Odyssey for the Sega Genesis. That was the opening track by Motoi Sakuraba, and that came out in 1991 on the Sega Genesis. This game soundtrack I found on a whim because I was researching Motoi Sakuraba. I really wanted to do an episode on him. And so I was kind of holding this track back, and I've really wanted to play it for probably about close to a year. Wow. And I couldn't hold it anymore. As soon as you were like, openings and titles, I was like, oh my god, perfect.
Yeah.
I love this song. It is fantastic. It's really plotting and dark sounding. And it's just, talk about it, because I'll just gush.
I love the fact that there are so many changes, and it tells a story just in the music.
Right.
Because like all the different changes, like the mood changes so many times. It's
similar to Donkey Kong Country.
It's just sort of like the sort of neutral beginning. Here's the story, and then this bad thing happens, and then the track just sort of changes.
Here's the hero, and it gets really fast.
Right. Yeah.
It goes back to the.
It's not doing anything like, I guess, particularly innovative in terms of hardware, really, because it sounds like pretty rudimentary.
It's very minimalistic.
Yeah.
It's
Genesis
only like
tones.
2 or 3 channels going at a time.
It's got all those like tones that like, that Genesis, the basic sort of. Yeah. And you gotta really love that.
Yeah.
And I do. Sometimes even if the Genesis sounds bad, I like it for the character.
Yeah.
For its character.
Reminded me a lot of Elemental Master for Genesis.
I hear Shadowrun a lot
theme,
in the beginning.
maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like, Motoi Sakuraba used a lot of claps in El Viento.
Yes.
And I feel like the
did
developers were like, dude, you use way too many claps in this soundtrack.
Yeah.
And so he was like, fine, I'm only going to use 2.
Yeah. It's true.
They compromised for the 2.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, they wanted him to use none, and he was like, can I at least use 2?
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, fine.
But the rest of the soundtrack is pretty similar to a lot of his other stuff that he's done with like El Viento or Ernest Evans. Like his pretty standard Wolf Team developed Genesis tracks.
Yeah.
This is before he jumped ship with a lot of the developers from Wolf Team, and they formed Tri-Ace, who's obviously Star Ocean.
His Star Ocean stuff is great.
Tales of Fantasia. Tales of Fantasia was the last game that Wolf Team developed before they left. Before a good chunk of the people left. So,
and all those golf games too.
Yeah.
For Camelot.
Yep. Just the opening cinematic to this, as Cam was saying, it tells a story. So the whole purpose of the game is there's this evil sorceress named Castamira, and she wants to destroy the land of Arcus and basically turn it into a dark, evil, terrible place. There's this princess named Lady who is strong enough to try to stop her. She's a good sorceress, so it's kind of like the good witch versus the bad witch, wicked witch.
Not a witch at all.
No. Lady challenges Castamira to this battle, and they fought for 2 whole days. So the whole cutscene kind of builds up. It's got these really cool comic book style
breaks for snacks and bathrooms.
Yeah,
they had porta potties set up along the
Hold
perimeter of the
on,
battlefield.
they're like extending their hands, like, hold on, I'm gonna go to the loo. The whole cutscene is really cool because it starts off like it's got this like mountain and everything, and then it kind of moves into these like comic book panels where you see close-ups of the characters' faces. One half will just be like half of the face, or like a close-up on the eye, and the clips kind of like come in and get placed on top of the old clip that they
very
first
stylistic,
visually impressive,
yeah.
surprising.
Very impressive for the Genesis, and what I really think is cool about it is it kind of like highlights, like puts a border, like a black border around the characters. It's got a really cool like anime comic
like
book
a cel-shaded
style.
kind of
Right. And then it kicks into that plotting bass, do, and then it kicks into eventually that crescendo. It just kind of
where the snare
goes
comes
up
in,
with
where the drums come in.
And the bass is going like after the second time of the bass looping with that just it kind of like kicks into these like different notes where like It's just really cool. So fans of like bass guitar and like that type of style, it's got that really awesome like progressive metal style that I really love. And it builds, and what it builds up to is this big fight scene that they showcase where they fight for 2 days. And so you see the 2 characters on opposite sides, and they're blasting each other like these laser blasts or whatever.
Such a great shot.
And when the music builds up to that point and you see the entire, it's not mode 7, I don't know what it is. It could be like built into the software, but they like rotate and scale the background of this like grassy area that they're in.
Yeah, Genesis could do that in software.
Yeah, in software.
It's got the processing power.
Right. But it didn't have Mode 7 traditionally.
Right,
So,
it's not built into the hardware.
Right, but just like that blew me away when I saw the Genesis doing that. I was just like, I couldn't comprehend it. It was just like so visually impressive.
That one shot where they're like shooting like
the laser blast.
They're attacking each other, and like the explosion in the middle.
Yes.
Where it goes like gets bright.
Yep.
And the rest of the screen kind of goes dark.
Yeah, and then it
really
fades it goes into that more like tranquil, kind of like upright bass going boom, wow, like it's such a memorable track.
Sounds like they had a lot of meetings about how to make this intro the best they possibly could.
Yeah.
Gathered everybody together and just made sure everyone was on the same page, because it sounds like the audio meets the video, meets the special effects, meets the artwork, so it all kind of gelled together to make it really cool.
They took the intro as a movie and then scored it.
Right,
Definitely.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you're probably wondering what this game's even about, or at least what this game plays like, because we kind of touched on the story. I'm not going to get too involved in it. It's a hack and slash. It's like an isometric, top-down hack and slash game. You can pick as 4 different characters. There's like 2 heroes, like standard fighter-type characters. And then you've got an archer and a magic wizard, old wizard guy. And so you're going through this level, like the level layout, top down. I mean, you played it, Cam. What do you think of it?
I really like it.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. My first impression of when I saw it, I was like, oh, this kind of looks a little dated and silly.
Yeah.
But immediately I was like, oh, this feels really comfortable. It's my kind of game. I love those kind of games. And
it's like Gauntlet.
That's
what I was going to say, yeah.
It's the isometric view without the isometric controls. I don't really know what to call it.
That's
so
cool.
you can move in any direction.
So when you press up, you go true up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Like games like Solstice and Equinox, like
Marble Madness.
Right, yeah. I just get like, I can never get used to it.
You got to hold the controller at an angle to match with the way you're going.
Yeah.
And the controls are good. It's fun too.
It's a little confusing. Like I own this game loose. I really want to get a manual so I can understand like how to play the game really, because there's so much to it that you can get. You pick up these treasure chests and you get these magic spells and stuff. And we were kind of scratching our heads like, wait a minute.
I'm sure GameFAQs will probably
figuring out what the items do.
Yeah,
right.
see if there's a FAQ on GameFAQs or something. They'll probably tell you how to play.
I think it's actually it's kind of like Gauntlet-ish, but it also is kind of like Alien Syndrome. I don't know if you really played it.
Yeah, that's a great game.
Very true.
Yeah, it kind of feels similar.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if you can move 360 in Alien Syndrome. I don't remember.
You can. Yeah, well, the perspective is kind of sort of isometric.
Yeah.
It's more like top-down than isometric, I would say.
Yeah.
But the movement style is not really isometric, I would say.
Right.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely one worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that pretty much does it for our show. Cam, thank you so much for being on.
No, thank you.
Thank you. You're so gracious.
No, but that was a great selection of tracks. I really enjoyed, like...
You could even say that you're bickety-buck humble. Yes. Yes.
You win the episode, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was
on that
amazing.
one.
Yes.
Anyhow, yes, always a pleasure to have you, and you will be joining us at the Retro World Expo
For
too,
sure.
as well in a couple
Yep.
weeks. So that's going to be a lot of fun too.
Looking forward to that.
Hang out and check out some games and some
Lots of games.
and some panels and stuff. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Video games. So wow, we're getting really close to episode 100, huh?
Whew.
So what are we doing for episode 99?
99, we are doing our annual Halloween episode, but we're doing a bit of a twist. There's going to be a bit of a lag in release of episodes just because of the way that this works out, but we're going to be featuring some of the podcast members of VGM Jukebox and Rhythm and Pixels,
because we'll be hanging out with them at Retro World
Expo. Exactly. So we're going to be featuring them, and then that's going to be probably about an hour long, but we're also going to include the panel that we do as well. Now this is of course pending that we're able to record the panel and everything. If not, we'll figure out something else, but right now everything's very up in the air just because we don't know like what time everyone's going to be around.
So we're going to do some. We'll say we're going to do some sort of spooky spectacular with special guests.
Right, exactly.
We'll leave it at that, I think.
There you go.
Possibly live from the expo, possibly recorded in PixelTunes Creepy Castle basement or my place or wherever we end up.
Wherever we go.
We will have a special episode for episode 99, and then of course we'll have a super special episode for episode 100.
Yes.
So stay tuned for a couple of really cool.
It's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for a bi-weekly show.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking? I haven't been... Last time I was on Pixel Tunes was 55 episodes ago. And I think that's more episodes than The Walking Dead. And The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones have put out since then.
It's true.
That's true.
And we put just as much work into it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The production quality is right there.
And
way more.
We spend just as much money, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No.
Kill so many people.
Walkers.
Walkers.
White walkers.
And
regular walkers.
And regular walkers. Right.
A lot of episodes.
Yes.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget to check us out at pixeltunesradio.com, where you can leave a comment or listen to all of our episodes. You can also do that on iTunes, Stitcher, and pretty much every other podcatcher. And Ed's got his side podcast, Impulse Project.
Yeah, impulseproject.info. You can check out our stuff if you like, the Euro and Tell and a lot of the other more arpeggio-lated tracks that we play. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of that stuff coming out of Impulse Project. You can also head over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/PixelTunesRadio, or check us out on Twitter at PixelTunesRadio.
Yes, you can also check us out at youtube.com/dongled. Don't forget, October 8th, I'm going to be doing that Castlevania or Catsylvania stream. We'll be playing Castlevania games for a animal shelter charity.
Cool. Anything you want to plug, Cam, while you're here?
I wish I had some things. But I don't really have anything currently active right now. I have things online if you want to check out Camicom, which is a project, video game cover project I do with Cam Chiles, who's a
member of the Mad Gear.
Yep, Mad Gear, which you should also check out if you haven't already.
Absolutely.
So we have a thing on a channel on YouTube and SoundCloud. So if you want to look up Camicom and listen to a few songs we have up there.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes.
We'll have more eventually. It's kind of a slow-going project, but that's all I really got right
That's what happens when you live across the country from the person you're working with.
Yep.
I know the feeling.
Nothing else that you want to bickety plug? Pluggle?
Oh,
that was
now
bad.
You're reaching. Now I'm rescinding your winning the podcast.
I think you officially ran it in the ground.
Yes.
Just then.
All right, guys. We will see you in 2 weeks. Cam, thank you again so much for coming on the show and chilling
No problem.
out with us.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
And we'll see ya. Peace.
Later.
What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumper. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumper. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumper. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumper. Bump to the bump to the bump to the bass. Bump to the bump to the bumper. Bump to the boot to the boot to the boot boot. Bump to the bass to the bass bass. Bump to the boot